Fab. Right, I will let people in and I'll keep an eye on the waiting room.
Sammy. Hello, everybody. We're just going to wait for a few more to join, and then we'll get going. Had quite a few register, didn't we, Ray? You're on mute, Ray.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'll just keep an eye. People might join in a couple of minutes and then
Okie dokie.
uh,
So I think if you're listening, if you can turn off your cameras and mics, that would be good. Mute yourselves. That'd be great. Thank you. Just give it another minute or so, just in case there's some people just coming in. Just sent out the reminder, so hopefully people will join us shortly. Brilliant. Well, let's just do some introductions. It's 2 minutes past, so hopefully people will catch up and join us as we keep going on. So, welcome to our next interview in the interview series here. And we've got two lovely ladies for you today. So, we've got Tara and Sarah. So, welcome, guys. Just a reminder that we're here today under the Women in Wheels banner run by Today's Media. My name is Pippa Shepherd. I'm Head of Customer Engagement at Arken Legal. If you don't know us, then we provide wheel drafting software plus a myriad of other different products and that can help with risk management, lead generation, digital data capture, all kinds of lovely things there. But today we're here to talk to Sarah and Tara. And our theme really for today is how sports and endurance training can help us at work. So let me just tell you a little bit about Tara and Sarah first before we get into the interrogation. So Tara is a partner at the Burnside Partnership, is a litigation certificate a solicitor who deals with contentious probate disputes. She's a full member of ACTAPS and is listed in both the Legal 500 and Chambers High Net Worth. She's also an accomplished runner, and she's just been showing us our medals actually, which is fantastic. She's completed multiple marathons and ultra marathons, so puts us all to shame there. And then we got Sarah Bolt. She's the partner and head of wills and probate disputes team at Culver Law. So Sarah has over 12 years experience in dealing with high value, complex and cross-border trust and estate disputes. She also has a wealth of experience dealing with charities and on disputes arising in the court of protection. So outside of work, Sarah is part of the local field hockey team and takes part in endurance triathlons, and the latest one being an Ironman Wales in Tenby back in September. So, firstly, you put me to shame. I'm still trying to finish my couch potato to 5K. You really are inspirational guys in what you do, extraordinary efforts by you both have achieved there. I've always been really interested in sport. We were talking a little bit earlier. My daughter is an athlete. She's a sprinter, and I see how good it is for her mental health, etc. And also the Arken CEO, Dave, who many of you might know, is a real advocate of the link between sport and work. So it'd be really interesting to get, Tara and Sarah's thoughts on that today. So let's go to each of you individually first. Perhaps I should ask you if you're both absolutely mad with what you achieve. It's incredible. So Tara, really, if I come to you first, what inspired you to get into endurance sport and how has that passion really evolved over time?
Hi, Pippa. Well, I'm not really sure how to answer that. So I have I used to run quite a bit. I started I think maybe in my late 30 early late 20s, early 30s. I used to do 5Ks, 10Ks, never ever interested in running a marathon because why would you?
Yeah.
And then in 2015 I had a close family member die very suddenly. And I think I just wanted to do something, and I wanted to run a marathon, and I wanted to raise money for a charity. I wanted to enter London because that's the only marathon that you really need to run. I only ever wanted to run one marathon. But anyone who's ever tried to get into London realizes it's they don't seem to agree with my plan. And so I had to run Edinburgh, which is where my mother lives. I ran that in 2018 and then got a good for age for London. So then I had to run London, and then I had to sign up and run the six World Marathon Majors because, well,
Why
I don't
not?
know, I don't know why. Why not? So I think the initial motivation was my sister dying, and I think raising the money for charity, and then I just kind of got the bug, and I liked the plan, the training. I liked the consistency. It made me feel great. It helped me cope with the grief, and then it just really took off from there.
So just show off a bit for us. Tell us which ones you've actually done.
Um, so again, I only started running marathons in about 2018, but so I ran Edinburgh, then I ran London, then I did New York, I'm looking at my thing now, and then I did what did I do? Berlin. We obviously had lockdown. I trained, so I did a few virtuals. I did Boston, Chicago. Last year I did Tokyo. I've done Manchester as well. And then I just did a few ultras. So I've done a few 50s, 106 and 80, 80 kilometers, that is. Yeah, so just a whole mix.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Which was the hardest? What's the hardest one you've ever done?
So it's not actually one of the ultras or the marathons. It is. So I was training for two marathons this year, and then as we were saying before,
Yeah.
I tripped over a tree root on a really easy 5K run by the river. I wasn't even going fast, and I broke my ankle and tore the inside tendon and the outside tendon. I was in a cast for 6 weeks and told I was under strict instructions not to run. I had signed up for the Marathon Portous, which was meant to be running in the Olympic at the end of the Olympics marathon, and I trained, and it was really hard to get into, and I really wanted that medal.
Oh,
But my physio wouldn't let me run it, so I went off to Paris, and I decided that I might see if I could get in to run the 10K instead. So I kind of blagged my way into the 10K, and that was the hardest. That was the hardest race I've ever run because I had literally just come out of a cast and I wasn't supposed to be running, and I'd only broken my ankle 7 weeks before. Everything hurt. It was in the dark. They have cobbles in Paris, which were not great, and I was
oh,
paranoid I was going to go over on my ankle. So
yeah.
that was actually the hardest race
The
I've ever
hardest one you've done.
run.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Sarah, tell us a little bit about you and what inspired you to get into endurance sports.
It's actually not too dissimilar in terms of why I got into it, but I had got I had a fancy story, but I moved to work in the Caribbean for a couple of years, and I worked for a law firm on the British Virgin Islands,
Wow.
and I'd gone on the back of getting divorced, so there was kind of a big life change in going, and I think I got sucked into this very social side, the very food, drinks, enjoying myself side. And before I knew it, within 6 months, I probably put on about a stone, maybe two. And I knew that if I kept going like that it was just going to get worse. And I looked around, the waters were beautiful, and I was thinking to myself, where else could I learn to do swimming? And I could swim, but not to a great amount. And actually, a lot of people on the island were doing triathlons. And it was a friend at the time who had said he was signed up for a half Ironman. And it's not recommended. I just went zero to hero and did it, I think, no more than 8 weeks training from a standing start. And
Wow.
it was very hard. A half Ironman is half in distance, but it was long enough to be a suffering. And I enjoyed every moment of it, but it was just the ability to be outside, enjoy the sunshine that was there, and really make the most of being out and about, really, and meeting lots of wonderful people on the island. So, and it kind of just fell in love from that. But again, not recommended. Like 6 months after that, I did, no, it was not 6 months. It was probably less than that. I did a full Ironman, my first one.
Wow.
And they recommend doing at least 12 months training. So it was very much like mentality, which is really not good for the body. But it gave me such a challenge and such a kind of like focus. It kind of couldn't get away from it. And I haven't really stopped since then, really.
Absolutely. So just describe to us what you have to do from an Ironman's perspective if people don't know what you do.
So a full Ironman is 3.8 kilometers of swimming, and that could be in the sea, it could be in a lake. And then you transition into the bike, which is 180 kilometers. And then just to top all of that off, you do a marathon. And I don't suspect it's anything like Tara's marathons because I literally feel like I'm crawling in comparison. And I'm certainly not a fast bod at these. I very much am out there just to get round a lot of the time. So the most recent one took me 16 hours and 12 minutes. So it was a full day out and then some.
Gosh,
So yeah.
good grief. Yes. And how do you keep going, you two, when you get you hit that bar, when you think, oh, now I've done this swim, I've done this bike, now I've got to do a marathon, or I haven't got just a marathon to do, I've got an ultra marathon to do. How do you, when you hit that bar, how do you keep yourself going?
I mean, I can start, but with the triathlons, I very much see it as being get through the swim, finish off that, get through the transition, finish off that, and then go through each in bite-sized chunks. So I've got a goal and I just work through it one by one. It's strange because people around me and my coaches and training buddies have always said, like, oh, I'm sure you'll smash out a personal best in your like at the end, I'm sure you'll do your best marathon ever. And I'm like, I've just done all the other stuff because you kind of
Yeah.
just segment it down. But
Yeah.
you do have that mentality, and your body does actually get used to that level of training, that level kind of input that you do on a regular basis. So it might be slightly different because I've never done a marathon outside of an Ironman, so Tara can tell me otherwise.
No, exactly what you said. It's manageable chunks. So rather than if you were to look at the marathon, that sounds like quite a long way. If you were to look at a 106-kilometer ultra, that sounds like a huge distance. So instead of looking at it like that, I think, well, I'll run the first 10K and see how I am. Then I do the first 10K, then I'm a quarter done. So it's manageable chunks. Each time I've run 10 kilometers, I know I've done 10 kilometers, then the next 10K, well, it's halfway. Every step I take now is going to take me closer to the finish. So it's
Yeah.
just breaking it down. And I also tell myself, because I do try to go quite fast in the marathon, I mean, what I call fast in the marathons. But I also tell myself, just keep going. And do you know what? You can slow down. You can always slow down. So see how you go for the next 10K. And then if you need to slow down, just slow down. So just be kind to yourself, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So how has that transitioned into work? How do you find that with work? Has it changed your personal growth targets from a work perspective? Has your mindset changed since you started training? How do those changes translate into your work life? Either of you can go first.
That's
I
okay.
don't mind. Whoever wants to jump in.
I think that training is very similar to life, essentially. It could be an analogy. And really we have a plan for most things in life. Like if you're going to invest in a pension or savings, you would have a plan. You would review your plan and you would see how if you're getting close to achieving your plan. I think it's the same in training. You work through your plan, you tick it off, you can see how you're getting closer to the end result. I think in your career, I once had a career coach at a firm I used to work for, and he said you should do exactly the same. You should have a career plan. You should aim, 5 years in the future, look where you're going, and obviously not in as great level of detail as today I'm going to run a 5K, today I'm going to be at work and I'm going to write but you should have a plan. And if you're not achieving your plan, you should either review your plan or you should rethink and think maybe it's time to go somewhere else, get another job, get a new plan.
Yeah.
So I think I'm a very focused person on the plan, and I think that does transition into work as well, and your
Yeah.
career plan.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Sarah, did you have anything else to add to that?
I think it does have some synergies, I would say overlap. My big thing is that over time I've wanted more of a work-life balance, and I think it helps me get there. But I also think that yes, we could throw ourselves at doing, and I have done like a 12, 13, 14-hour days. But the reality is that the more breaks you get, whether that's
Do you agree with that?
mental or
I
physical,
see where he's coming
um,
from, thinking, oh, it's really low value, but
sorry,
actually it's going to be a pain.
um,
Sorry, Eleanor, do you mind putting yourself on mute? Sorry.
so the more I get in terms of I get more out of having done a lot more kind of exercise myself. I'm more focused and more recharged, and
Yeah.
mentally I'm able to deliver a lot more. And actually being more efficient during the hours that I'm there rather than spending longer seems to be a better way of doing things. So one of the other big things for me is that I can feel like if it's a challenging situation, it kind of is like that moment where you slow down and they're able to bite-size chunk it out. But very much like if that's something went wrong in my training or out on the field, you kind of just take a deep breath and are able to deal with it rather than get wound up or kind of you can deal with crisis quite well. That's what I've learned quite a lot more from my
Yeah.
exercise side of things.
And the tenacity that you both have, that continually, I'm going to go till I finish kind of thing, that has its real implications in the workplace as well, doesn't it? You don't let setbacks set you back. You use them to drive you forward, just like your broken foot. No, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep doing that one. Yes.
Yeah, don't tell my physio. I hope he's not listening in on this.
We won't send this into him, don't worry. So, I mean, when we talk about self-doubt, we all as women especially have a bit of self-doubt in the workplace every now and again. Do you find that the training and the sport elements help you with that, with stress release and self-doubt and all of that as well?
I I mean I don't know about you, Sarah. I definitely think it helps with your confidence. I wasn't, when I was at school, I wasn't one of those natural athletes. I wasn't a runner. I wasn't doing athletics. I was quite pudgy. I was short. I was, more interested in boys. I never would have thought I would be able to run marathons, half marathons,
Yeah.
ultra marathons, but then and when you start doing them, it's terrifying. I thought I was going to have a heart attack if I ran a marathon. It's terrifying. You don't see how you can actually achieve that. But the more you do, you trust in your plan and you realize that you can pretty much do anything. Anything is achievable as long as you train for it. And even if you don't train for it, like Sarah was saying, as long as you've got that tenacity to keep going, you
Yeah.
can pretty much do anything. And I think it helps with your confidence, which also again carries through into your work life. You can pretty
Yeah.
much do anything that you set your mind to.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
with the Ironman training, I mean, it's taken time because I think, like with anything new, there are 101 things that can go wrong on a triathlon as there could be in a run. And I mean, I've done a fair share of them, and I think you only learn from doing. So I know what I would never do again, but it goes to the extreme of like, what do you do in the swim? If my goggles get knocked off, I've got a spare pair hanging out in the suit that I have underneath me now, just in case. So
Yeah.
that there is the worst case scenario planning for it. So I basically plan well, I hope to succeed, but I plan for the very worst. And one of the things I did learn from Wales this year was the water was terrible. The course, it rained the entire day pretty much. And I think it was probably the worst weather I've had. But only 10% of the field were women, which is a massive drop on other triathlons around the world. And being out there and showing that you're there is a big deal. But of those 10%, only 50% finished or just over. So you're in
Wow.
a massive minority, but the
Yeah.
spirit of every single woman that's out there is so encouraging. They're so like positive. They're so like it is a different environment to the other competitors on the field. And yes, you will get some confidence from them around you, but the spirit that women have and in boosting other women up is just quite incredible. And actually, the spirit of people around you doing that is quite insane. And being able to then hopefully inspire others of all shapes and
Yeah.
sizes to actually then be able to do it themselves in the future. Well, I'd hope that would happen because honestly, it was quite something in Wales this year, and it has been in years gone by. But there isn't enough women in sports, full stop. But it just seems that it would be a big step up, really, in some ways.
Yeah, that's massively important though, isn't it? Because it's called Iron Man.
I know.
Yeah.
I just, I, yeah,
Um, and I was looking it up earlier and I was thinking, well, it's still called Iron Man and it's you've done Iron Men, but it should be Iron Women. Um, but that is quite interesting to see that take on it. The fact that there are so many more women doing these incredible feats, and I mean, I can't even remember the lady's name. Was it across Africa that run for miles and miles and miles and got the best? I don't know what it was now. I just remember seeing her finish in the news coming across the finish line. But she'd done, incredible things. And it's so inspiring to have women like that, like yourselves, that are doing that. Do you see sort of like younger people looking up to you, or can they incredulous when you say, "Oh yeah, no, I did an ultramarathon at the weekend. I did an Ironman." How does it go down in the office when you talk about what you're doing?
I think they just think you're mad though, don't they?
that's
So I mean that's what I
exactly
think.
that's
People
exactly
I
it.
don't think people get it. I'm not sure people look up, well, they definitely don't look up to me because I'm very short, but I just think they kind of look at you a bit strangely, like why would you want to do that? What Sarah said about women on the field, I
Hmm.
think it is hugely inspirational when you see women out there competing against men. And in ultras, women can actually win the race. I think it's one of the only
Wow,
sports where a woman can win the race again, competing against
as
men.
men, yeah,
And that wouldn't happen in a marathon. No one's going to
no,
beat the male marathon runner. But in ultras, once you start increasing the distance, women have more of a chance of winning the entire race. And there's something about that. I don't know if it's because we just are able to keep going for longer, or I don't know if it's something that's kind of, biological. But there's certainly something inspirational about women going out there and just keeping on going. That said, in terms of people at work, I think they still think I'm mad. I don't think I don't think they look up to
I'm
me.
sure they don't. I'm sure they think, "Wow, I wish I could do that." What about you, Sarah?
Certainly at work, I think, like with Culver Law, actually, Michael does his own level of endurance. I think they're kind of obstacle runs. So I'm
Wow,
kind of in awe of that. um,
yeah,
previous firms, I think, yes, probably do think, what on earth are you doing? I think one of the big things I have noticed, and my mum was a runner, but like a semi-elite one, and I can't run for toffee. It's kind of my worst bit, but she's kind of given me that nature of wanting to do it. And actually, my nieces, and I've got four of them, and my nephew, they all now they are now doing sport, and it's not really like girls getting into sport is becoming a better thing, but
yeah,
I think whenever I go and see them, they're really encouraging because they want to see somebody else doing like sport themselves, and like it is a big deal at like teenage level to choose to do
yeah,
that over hanging out with your mates or something like
yeah.
that. So yeah, they didn't come to see me do this one, but they're coming to do the next one, I think. And I just having that like it's a normal thing, I just hope encourages them to keep going. So
Absolutely. I think it is so, so good. Like I said, my daughter's a sprinter and she's 15, and all the hormones, all the friendship issues, boy issues, GCSEs, all of it. It really does put her in a really good place mentally. She kind of leaves it all out there on the track. And does that resonate with you guys that that the stress, it just helps you get out there, have a run, have a cycle, have a swim, whatever it is that you're doing, that it just kind of clears the day or sets the day up well?
I think exercise can help, definitely help with
Yeah.
stress, help with focus, help with, I think people think, oh, it makes you more tired, but I find that it actually, if I go for a run or a bike ride in the morning, I'm set up for the day. I've got more energy. I feel I have better food choices. It helps me to
Yeah.
eat better as well. Um, but I think I'm going to actually say that when I'm training for a marathon, sometimes the training it adds an extra level of stress sometimes. So general running obviously does help with stress. If I go out
Yeah.
for a lovely run in, it's beautiful weather today. If I go out for a run, then that really does help me de-stress. But when I'm training for a marathon, I mean, I
That's
run
stress.
quite a lot. It seems to, because I know I've got to go out and run intervals. And I
Yeah.
know I've got to fit that in, and I've got to get back for work, I've got to
Mm.
shower. So not always. Sometimes it adds an extra stress,
Yeah.
but it's something I want to do, and it's something that I do look forward to, and I enjoy. I actually feel
Yeah.
better when I am training than when I'm just sitting around eating donuts. I mean, that's just a
Yeah. You
given.
just feel healthier and happier.
Better
Happy
food
energy, isn't
choices,
it?
sleep better, more
Yes.
energy. I feel sometimes I feel amazing during that train. I feel tired and exhausted and old,
Yeah.
but
But it's a nice
that
feeling, isn't it? It's
it's a nice
quite addictive,
feeling.
isn't it?
Yeah.
What about you, Sarah?
I think I agree actually with Tara. It added, especially the last 2 months before Wales in September, it added a certain level of stress to my day to be like
Yeah.
to if I didn't get up and I knew that I was still like an exercise behind, it did meant there was a certain level of pressure to then get out and do
Yeah.
that. And I'm very laissez-faire with my training program. I will give myself some things to do in a day and then I'll figure out when to do them and hopefully have a plan, but it doesn't seem to be that rigid in terms of fitting it all in. So when I can't fit it in, it does absolutely like stress me beyond belief. But the kind of big kicker for me is like about probably 20 months ago, I got diagnosed with adult ADHD. And for me, it's a massive thing to manage my kind of like symptoms of that. And I think I've probably been doing it unknowingly for years.
Yeah.
But it certainly does help because I need to keep my dopamine hits in line, and that's one of the ways that I regulate it. So it just helps me manage that in more effective ways.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. So what's the biggest lesson you'd say that you've learned from endurance training? Because I mean, that there's training in keep fit, and then there's what you guys achieve, which is incredible. So what kind of is the biggest lesson you've learned from that endurance training that you believe that every woman should apply in their career?
Oh, that's tough.
Mm. Yeah.
Happy.
I think, as I said earlier, that probably for me, not being a natural athlete and struggling with my weight when I was younger, I think the lesson is that when you set your mind to something, you can do it, you can achieve it. I'm quite rigid with my plan. I like a plan. I like a nice plan. I do get a little bit stressed if I can't follow a plan.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it has taught me. So again, the training, the actual race is a very small part of what you do. So everybody talks about the actual race
Mm.
when I think it's the training that's harder because you train for 4 months, 6 months, and I run when I'm training 6 days a week. So that's a lot to fit in. You're meant to be stretching, you're meant to be doing physio, you're meant to be doing
Yeah.
all of that on top. That is a lot to fit into your life when you've got two children and you work full time and
Yeah.
you want to go out and have friends. So
Yeah.
it teaches me how to be organized, how to be efficient, how to work to a plan. But it really also teaches me that as long as I stick to my plan, I can pretty much achieve anything. It's given me confidence. It makes me feel more like confident at work and generally in life. And
Yeah.
when I started out, I never would have thought I would be capable of achieving what I've achieved, and I just think that makes me feel quite good
Yeah.
about myself.
But a fantastic inspiration and lesson for your children as well. The fact that they can see you striving for a goal and achieving it, the fitness, all of that is a fantastic role model for them to see growing up as well, I think.
Well, you would hope so, but my children don't really do anything. I'm hoping it will come to them later. I mean, they did used to run when they were little, but then
Yeah,
I think, and that's when we were talking about sports earlier, for teenage girls in particular.
yeah,
Lots of girls will do the sports when they're younger, primary school, and maybe early secondary school. There
yeah,
is a huge drop off when they hit
yeah,
puberty.
yeah,
So keeping teenage girls in sport, I think that is really important. And the
yeah,
same thing happened to my daughter. The same thing happened to me
yeah,
when we became teenagers and your friends aren't doing it
yeah,
and it drops off. So creating that atmosphere that it's okay to carry on doing sport and actually it will help you get through those hormonal changes. I think that's
yeah.
really
And
important.
and we were talking earlier, weren't we, in any kind of period of life where there's hormonal changes, whether that be teenage years, whether that be, pregnancy, post-pregnancy, or perimenopause or whatever, then it really helps balance those out as well.
Oh, I mean, definitely helps with it. I find it helps with my hormones. Mainly, maybe because you're just so exhausted the whole time. I don't know. Maybe that's part
You
of the
don't have the
reason why
energy to be grumpy.
I don't have the energy to have arguments with people and throw things. I'm just exhausted, but it
Yeah,
definitely helps with hormone. I think I've probably, at different stages in my life, like when you've just given birth, or when you're not that I was running much when I was pregnant, but
yeah,
and then just, it helps with those perimenopausal symptoms. I think exercise is a great,
yeah,
um, great help when you have medical issues, depending on
yeah,
what doctors say, but it
yeah,
really does help with medical issues and medical concerns, and hormonal imbalances as well,
yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. What about you, Sarah?
I would say it's probably given me a lot more confidence, but I mean, once you've done like an Ironman or a marathon, I would say that I mean, there's nothing I don't think I can't do anymore, rather
Yeah,
than that mindset of thinking, God, I can only do one of these 10 things. And I think
yeah,
it's I've learned over the years outside of the training that there's lots of different things about how often men will often approach stuff in the workplace to how
yeah,
women do. And actually trying to reset that and rebalance it is
yeah,
probably a big one. And actually having to then go out against, like, you all start at the same time in an Ironman, regardless of gender, and you
mm,
all have the same amount of time, which is controversial in itself, given
yeah,
that the elite runners often finish an hour difference. And then how would that factor down the field? But yeah, it means to me, if I set a challenge, I can do it. And I have to say, there are moments of like absolute self-doubt in the middle
yeah.
of those things. It gets cold, it gets wet. I nearly threw my bike against the wall in Wales. Like, you do hit a wall, but at that point, you're thinking, when you get to work, what's the worst that can go wrong? Like,
Yeah.
because you've already gone through it. So yeah.
I think that's a really important point, because I think we've talked about in interviews prior that I've done that, if you go for an interview, as a man, if they believe they can do it, they'll say they've done it. If we believe that we haven't done it, we won't say that we could do it.
Mm,
And there's a very difference when you're interviewing a man and a woman, what you can take away from that, and just being able to balance that a little bit and say, well, do you know what? There's nothing I can't do. And, I've got that tenacity to push that forward is a really important lesson, I think. So thanks for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about what got you into private client then. I'll go to you first, Sarah. So what started you off in the private client arena?
So I knew I wanted to be a litigator, and that was the one thing that I always knew. It was just the right area. And actually, it wasn't until I, a couple of years into qualifying, that I landed a job down in Bristol. And they were, like, thankfully, it's public knowledge, but they were dealing with as the executors for the Jimmy Savile estate. So I got
Wow.
baptism by fire in my first job. But what it taught me was that that was probably an area of law that would really suit me. Not because it was so horrible, but because it was just, I hadn't really thought about it as an option.
Yeah,
And I'd gone through financial litigation, I tried insolvency, I did commercial disputes, so contracts, and it just wasn't personal enough, and I didn't feel like I was
yeah,
helping anyone. And then coming across that, I then got a job subsequent to that, working with charities and with personal individuals. So,
yeah,
and that's when it really clicked. This is what I want to do, and it's the mix between helping people, feeling like you're making a difference, but being able to be there for somebody at the worst point in their life and guide them through the process so they can get where they want to be. It may not always work out that way, but you can guide them to the result that's best for them.
yeah,
And then really seeing that difference, because effectively a lot of our job, sometimes it feels like we are counselors, I have to say.
yeah,
And that's part and package of it. We are really important and trusted advisors in that
yeah,
process. And they need to make sure that they can like associate with you as much as anything else, and
yeah,
understand that they can talk to you. So
yeah. Brilliant. What about you, Tara?
No, I was always a litigator again. I started off just doing general civil litigation, commercial litigation. Then we moved to Australia for 4 years, and then when I came back, I went to work for a partner in a firm, and he specialized in contentious probate. And I also assisted another partner who dealt with commercial litigation. And so I did both, which seems a strange mix, but
Yeah,
that's how it was. I very quickly realized that I preferred the contentious probate side of things. And like Sarah said, well, first of all, the area of law is really interesting. There are lots of different, every single case is different.
Yeah,
But also I prefer the more, I like the family kind of history. You get to hear so many interesting things, so many
yeah,
stories, people's lives. I mean, most clients start off telling me, it's going to be a long call when they start off saying, "Oh, when I was 5, my brother," and it's just so fascinating because you do hear a
yeah,
lot about other people's lives and not always pleasant things, mostly not pleasant things, but I love litigation, so I am a litigator. I love that trying to settle cases or
yeah,
the court action, but I also really enjoy the family side of things, the
yeah,
personal
yeah,
issues, relationships.
yeah. No, really good, really good. And if there was advice that you could give yourselves when you were starting out, if there's any young people coming into the careers now, into the industry, what is there any advice you would give them now to think about?
Oh, good question. I think it, I not, I think when I applied first off for training contracts, I think I was doing a very big scattergun approach. And it wasn't until the year that I got a training contract that I really nailed it down to 3 or 4. And I got 3 of the 4. So I think my advice would be really research and look into what you want, whether the firm offers it for you. The problem that a lot of people going in, and I was of the same, is very much that I was trying to sell myself to them, and it's a two-way process, and you forget
Absolutely.
that it's more about you and them being the right fit.
Yeah,
And that's the same in lifelong career, that often it's more important about the manager and the people than the actual
absolutely.
job itself. And that's only
Yeah,
something I've probably learned in the last 5 years.
yeah,
But taking the time as well to actually, and I think probably turning 40 next week, I think I've learned more about myself in the last 2 years than I have collectively in the 38 before
yeah,
that. And actually, that's eye-opening, whether that's through sport or otherwise.
yeah.
Um, but the self-help, the self-guide, and like it does make a massive difference. So take the time to invest in you.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And there's nothing wrong in turning down something that doesn't feel right, or don't just stick at something because that you know isn't right, but you feel you should. I think that that is really, really important. I think when we know when I'm interviewing anybody for a role now, it's just as important to sell the company to them as it is for us to understand, because getting the right fit culturally is the most important thing. Um, Brilliant. So for us mere mortals, how do we, if we wanted to start on a fitness regime, have a plan? Tom, I've got that from you. I need a plan. Um, but how do you start off? How do you start right at the bottom? How do you get me to run a marathon next year? I'm not going to, by the way, but yeah.
I think we're going to get you to run a marathon, Pippa.
I would
Um,
just like to run a 5K. I'd be happy to just run a 5K.
I think just work out what suits you. Again, I'm not suggesting everybody goes out and runs 106 kilometers around the Isle of Wight. If that floats your boat, then by all means go out and do that. But I do think exercise is important. I do think it helps with life. I do think it helps with work and focus and all of those things. But I think starting out, just be kind to yourself. Just try and work out something that you can do, that you can fit into your day. We all have time. We all spend a lot of time scrolling on the internet or
Yeah,
watching Netflix. That you can fit 20 minutes in a day. Um, Find something that works. Find something that you enjoy and that you can stick at. Get a plan. That's
yeah,
key for me anyway.
got a plan.
And then just try and set yourself manageable, achievable goals and just work towards those goals. And when you get to those goals, you will feel so inspired, and you might then want to do more goals, harder goals. I think that it's just about picking something that you're going to stick to
Yeah,
and don't give up. If you have a bad day and you don't do your exercise for a couple of weeks, don't just throw in the towel. Don't just think, well, that's it. I'm never going to be able to do that. just get right back on board and be
Yeah.
kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Let yourself have days off, let yourself fail, but just get back, just get back in there and get
Just
back out
start,
there.
isn't it? Just put one
Yeah,
foot in front of each other and start. What would you
yeah,
say, Sarah?
I think the hardest thing is always the first month of anything, as in training, I suppose in some ways work, because it's baptism by fire. So you're
Yeah.
going from doing something you didn't do to something you did do. For me, I would say the reason I think triathlons have worked for me is because there's variety. So I have figured out that I also can do my hockey, or if I want to play paddle with my friends, that I can fit that in around doing it or incorporate it in, and
Yeah.
having that variation then helps. So I would say figure out what your key kind of interest or your kicker is.
Yeah.
That if you want to exercise because you want to eat mountains of cake like I do, then make that your thing and reward yourself. However, but just I wouldn't take it too seriously, because once you take the kind of fun out of it, it
Yeah.
just becomes more of a stress, more of
sure.
a burden. It just, yeah, exactly
Yeah.
that, and that's
Becomes that
exactly what you
stress
need.
as you were talking about
Exactly
rather
Yeah,
that.
than the
Yeah,
yeah,
enjoyment. Yeah.
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 Brilliant. So, I mean, I don't know if there's any questions there. If anybody wants to ask questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. So, what's next for you then? What are you aiming for next, Sarah? What are you going to try and do next?
I think after Wales, it took me like a month to post about it on LinkedIn and anywhere actually, to be honest. So I think I was very relieved just to have finished. It was quite something. It was a day that I won't
Yeah.
forget. My friends have been trying to get me to sign up for another one, so I will. I'm just trying to pick one where I know it won't be raining and cold,
Yeah.
and probably not as many hills. So
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be looking to do either Hamburg in June, or they've now got a new one in Leeds in July, which would mean my family could come and watch me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I'm torn because I know Leeds will be really hilly, but I think there's always, like, I now feel like I have a gap, and if I don't have some goal to train towards, I will invariably end up just slipping off my
Yeah.
training plan. So I do need something, but it's also that feeling when you cross the finish line, you just don't forget it, and it is something you don't get when you're just out plodding the streets.
Yeah.
So it is something that I need to figure out, but it's just picking something at the
Yeah.
moment.
I don't know. I think I'd go back to the British Virgin Islands. It sounds like a really nice place to do it rather than wet Wales, or you can't necessarily guarantee the weather in Hamburg or in Leeds, can you? But yeah, well, brilliant. What
Yeah.
about you, Tara? I mean, you're coming back from injury after injury, bless you. But
Yeah, I'm a bit injured, so I'm back running now, but I need to be a bit sensible and be kind
yeah.
to myself. That said, I have signed up for the super half marathons, which are only half, so they're not full
Only.
marathons.
Yeah.
And there's six of those, so I'm going to do those. I'm also thinking about Sydney because they've joined Sydney to the Abbott World Marathon Majors. So I was meant to do that this year, so I might try and do that next year. And I think they're thinking of joining two others as well, but I don't know. I might do a few ultras, but I
Yeah.
think again it's just being kind to yourself and knowing that I am injured, so I don't push myself and
Too much. Yeah.
yeah, and just ease back in gently. But I would never stop. I'd
Yes.
never stop running or stop training. I'd always find something else.
Has to do. Yeah. We have got one question from Claire. She said, "Is there a marathon or event that you'd still really like to do?" We talked a little bit about what's next, but is there something
Oh.
out there that you really would like to go for?
Loads. There's loads. There's like
No?
every time I see one, I'm like, oh, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do Marathon des Sables, which is the one where you run through the desert and you do like I think it's a marathon every day. On one day there's a double marathon, but it's in the desert, so it's on sand, and you have to carry all
Wow.
your kit.
Oh
I
gosh.
I quite fancy that one. Or there's UTMB, which is running through the Alps. Through France, Switzerland, and Italy. Again,
Gosh.
that goes. I mean, there's low. Every time I see something, I'm like, oh, that would be really good. I do have a running buddy, and again, going back to what we were
That's
saying
nice.
earlier, I think what's key to keep focused in running and endurance and also work is to have like a mentor or to have somebody to support
Yeah,
you, someone you can talk to about it and to help you on your journey. And so we've run most of the marathons together, and
that's good. Yeah.
I've just got to persuade her to do Marathon des Sables, really.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of running groups that have popped up over the years as well, isn't there? I mean, I know there's a beginners one that goes for me that I've looked at in the past, and there's park runs everywhere nowadays that you can go and do 5Ks on Saturday mornings, can't you? So there's lots of opportunities because, like you say, it's always nice to do that with somebody else. Is there
Yeah.
something else that you're going to go for then, Sarah?
Yeah, I was just going to say off the back of that as well, because it's got so dark so quickly and so cold, having someone that you're accountable to or like
Yeah,
being able to join up with, it makes it more easy. But also as women, it's easier to go off in the
yeah,
dark with groups
yeah,
rather than on your own because it does feel
yeah.
quite isolating at times. Um, for me, the big pinnacle, and they've just had it, they've switched it every year now. So they had it's in Hawaii, it's called Kona, and it's the
Oh,
World Championships. This year they had it for men, next year it's for women. You have to
right.
get a qualifying slot from one of the events you take part in. And because there's so few women, it usually means that if you are there and you finish in a reasonable time, you might get there. So that
Yeah,
would be the ideal thing, but it's going to cost a fortune. It
Mm.
does take a really long time to like Hawaii is going to cost a fortune, and it is known for being thankless in the sense that the terrain is just like mental. So, but I mean,
forgiving. Yeah,
this year they had a man finish, let's say, a first like double amputee. He did the whole thing in just over 14
wow.
hours and set the world record by 2 hours.
Yeah.
The next, it was incredible to watch. But the elites put us completely to shame. They're like eight, 7 hours the men are to do the whole thing.
Wow.
God.
And I think it's just over 8 for women. So you're talking like that's madness. But that would
I
be
feel like I want to
like a
do that now, Sarah.
it's complete madness. Um, but yeah, that would be the pinnacle of it all. If I could get there. This year they did it in Nice, which didn't have the same ring to it. So I just yeah.
So I've got another question there saying, would you advise joining a local club as a complete beginner? I struggle to run down the street.
I think that the support is really important. It's always easier to do something when you've got somebody else to do it with you.
Yeah,
We have a WhatsApp group for local runners, and again, women. That's what we're good at. We're good at
yeah,
supporting other women. And as Sarah said, no one wants to go out and run in the dark. Although I do have to do that quite a lot, but
Yeah.
nobody wants to do it. It's harder, and
yeah,
it's trying to get rid of those obstacles that make it harder to get out the door, to get your trainers
yeah,
on, to get out the door. That's the hardest bit. So if you've got somebody waiting for you at the
yeah.
local village hall, you know you
Gotta
have to get
go.
there. So
Yeah,
if it's joining a club or setting up a group of local people, then yeah, whatever makes it easier for you to get out there, I would
yeah.
say.
I would say, and if
Absolutely.
it's the scare factor of turning up and being the worst runner there, I would say in most running groups I've been to, there's groups from one who are like the amazing bobbing around. I don't know how they run so fast sort of group. And they look like they're sprinting, to be honest. And right down to the sixes or sevens where they have the newbies and there will be groups that will be able to carry you along. So I wouldn't ever be worried, but I would always investigate whether that is the case with the group by asking by email, like message beforehand, because you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to go into an elite running club and be like, that's it, game over." Yeah,
Well, I'm saying
Yeah.
that my daughter, like I say, she's at a local athletics club, and we went to a meet where she was doing her first run, and there's a group for the over 18s or whatever it is, or over 25s, I think maybe, and there was a 90-year-old man running, and he was
Oh,
sprinting in a 400 meters, and I mean he came way behind everybody, but he got the biggest cheer as he came in. So I think, yeah, perhaps I need to go and run with him. It might
I
be.
think the oldest guy to finish the marathon was like 101 or something.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? And so that puts me to shame. It means that I can start and get going there. And yeah, I think with me joining a local club would be quite good because I tend to think that I'm the fit 22-year-old that I was and injure myself very quickly by trying to do too much. So yeah, I think a local club will probably help you increase your running at a steady pace rather than going off and being silly, which is what normally I try and do.
I've been looking at whether to get like a treadmill, not a fast one, for under my desk.
Yeah.
But I have visions, and thankfully it'll be just me at home, of me falling off the back of it or something. So
Yeah.
but I'm sure that a standing desk combined with something like that, there are people
Yeah.
that cycle and can still work.
Yeah.
might be like a good in between to make you feel like you're not ruining your hip muscles all the time. Because
Yeah.
that's a big thing from working from home and not being in the office all the time, is that there's probably a lot more injuries,
Yeah.
like my physio says,
Yeah.
because of that kind of
Yeah.
innate nature of not moving
Yeah.
around as much. So
I have got one of those that goes under the desk. It's just impossible to type as you're walking.
that's exactly
Yeah.
it. So
I find that, but it is a good thing to start because, like I was saying in our pre-chat, that I just go bright red, so I can do it in the comfort of my own spare room. Nobody sees me bright red. But yeah, you can't. They're not very long, so if you're used to doing good strides and stuff like that, my husband can't run on it. It's just not long enough. But
Yeah, I think
yeah,
Sarah's right though that since COVID, lots of us have gone to working from home,
yeah,
and I actually think that contributes to the injuries because you spend like 8, 9 hours, your body's all scrunched up, sitting
yeah,
down, which we're not designed to do,
yeah,
hunched over a computer, and then someone goes out for a 5K run and says, well, I injured myself. Well, of course you did. You spent 9 hours sat there scrunched
yeah,
over a computer. Then you ask your body to do what it's supposed to do, which is to move,
yeah,
and your body kind of rebelled. So
yeah,
I don't necessarily think it's the running or the exercise that injures you. I think it's what we're doing the rest of the time that
yeah.
just makes the muscles less pliable and
Angle, yeah, less warm, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I have to say, I think you've been a fantastic guest to have on. So thank you very much. And I think you're an inspiration to us all. And we will all start running or swimming or biking in the next couple of weeks. Let's hope we can keep it going. But thank you so, so much. It's incredible. And yeah, what you're doing is really to be celebrated because I think you are fantastic role models in our industry for what you achieve.
thank you
Thank
so
So,
much.
and
you.
somebody's
Thank
just said
you.
thank you for this session. It's been really inspiring, and Claire's going off for a walk right now. So, you've obviously made a real difference there. So, thank you very, very much. And yeah, tune in for the next one. And
Thank you. Thanks,
we'll
Pippa.
see you very much. Thank you again. Bye bye.
Bye.